And Home Affairs Minister Gigaba is distancing himself from allegations of state capture. Gigaba was fielding tough questions in a parliamentary inquiry. Gigaba says he was not personally involved in procurement processes at state-owned companies while he was Minister of Public Enterprises. But he says something must be done to empower black businesses and eliminate evergreen contracts. He adds that he regrets the appointments that were made during his tenure, which later became problematic. Gigaba is also at pains to clarify that he was not involved in the Gupta family's naturalization. The minister, he played a role in the AJ Gupta getting permanent resident status. He says this came into effect before he became a member of parliament.
I remember that Section 54 approval letters had been sent to me on a Wednesday. I can't recall the exact date. And the very next day, when I was reading the application documents, I received a request that I needed to speed up the approval. I called the department and queried this. I told them that I only received these documents the previous day and that I could not be rushed to make a decision. I needed to study the documents and apply my mind. In response to my query, I discovered that Eskom had already called the company that was going to supply the generators and they were ready to sign the contracts. In other words, Eskom was going to sign the contracts before I had even finished applying my mind to the documents that were in front of me. I was being expected merely to rubber stamp the Section 54 application instead of approve it, and I was not willing to do that. I addressed the prolonged tenures that had been served by many board members while I was dealing with Mr. Dame's testimony. That was the reason for the decision I took in May 2011. After an audit of the board had been completed. I therefore shall not rehash it now. I recommended at the time that two board members, Dr. Benny Fanaroff and Dr. Boni Mehlomakulu, be retained for continuity, and that the following candidates should be appointed as non-executive directors. First, Zola Tsotsi was appointed as the new chairperson.
Minister Gigaba also fielded questions that specifically focused on his relationship with the Gupta family. Opposition MPs sought to establish a link of undue influence on the minister by the family.
How many times have you been to Dubai in the past period when you were the Minister of Public Enterprises and of Home Affairs? That includes private visits and public visits. How many times have you been to Dubai?
I would have to find that information and bring it to you. So but I can confirm to you it had nothing to do with the Guptas. I've never been invited to Dubai by them. I've never been hosted by them. It was either on official business or I think once on personal business, and that's it.
So you do not know how many times you've been to Dubai as well?
No, as I say, when it comes to the official business, I will have to go back and check, and I can provide that information to the committee. And when it comes to personal times, I think I was there once in 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
The minister today has refused to take accountability and ownership as his role of Minister of State-owned entities. He's been blaming board members and executives for decisions that are being made, refuses to accept and acknowledge the fact that with the minister being in that position, the buck stops with you. Certainly making wild accusations that people tried to influence him and he told them to go away. When we asked who these people were, he suddenly forgot their names, not remembering whether he's declared certain things under his members' interests, and quite frankly getting overly emotional, which certainly indicates that there was a problem in his testimony today. I personally think that the minister should have been more open with our committee and certainly should have taken more ownership of his role and overseeing of the state-owned entities during the time that it entered the state of state capture.
And joining us on the phone line, General Bantu Olomisa, UDM leader. We have Edward Mitoli, political analyst in studio, and Mosiri Tsiane with the South African Liberty Foundation. General, welcome back and thanks again for joining us. Just your observation of the deposition today of Minister Gigaba.
I think we should first of all commend Gigaba for having complied with the order to come and testify in Parliament. Unlike other ministers who treat these hearings with disdain, and I hope that other ministers will learn a lot from him. However, in terms of his testimony, there is no doubt in anybody's mind that in order to get to the bottom of this, the state capture inquiry will be more equipped than the current members of parliament to dig deeper. And also remember that in the state capture inquiry, he will be taking an oath. And I hope that he will repeat verbatim what he had said today. But looking at him, he seems to be evading the part of accountability. These accounting officers in state departments and in SOEs, 9 out of 10 times, they act on the directives from their political heads. The powers of those accounting officers have long been usurped by the political heads of the ANC government. So, but as I say, let's wait for the real inquiry.
And it would be difficult for the parliamentary inquiry also to have that background information, as you're saying, whether indeed there is political influence from the principalities to the executive or accounting officers. Do you think he was right in part in saying that he can't be held liable for how then the appointees behave in SOEs?
He would be held accountable because, first of all, he has participated in recommending boards to Parliament or to the President. Why would he now shun away from taking responsibility when they are messing up? So this minister, in fact, people like this should not be in holding public office.
What are the outcomes that the inquiry itself is attempting to achieve? Because as you're saying, it will probably come with a report. It can't do forensic investigations per se. It relies a lot on the submission made by the witnesses or respondent.
Well, it's just part of the ANC propaganda to say we are doing something. After 9 years, we've been telling them that this is what is happening within the government structures. This is how your ministers are behaving. This is how the state is being looted. But just before the conference, those people who have been defending Zuma and ministers like Gigaba, all of a sudden, try to position themselves, because the elections are around the corner, to say we are doing something. So they are not going to blindfold all of us. We are on top of this exercise. Let the whole setup go to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. For instance, he was asked about how many trips, how many days has he gone to Dubai and so on. The Commission of Inquiry will be having the information to say, you said you went there once, you went there twice, but according to our printout from SAA or Emirates, these are the dates you were in Dubai. But the parliamentary committee won't have that information. That's a waste of time.
General, if you're saying this is essentially just in your words, ANC propaganda, why are the opposition parties legitimizing a process where you feel it is for the ruling party to be perceived to be acting on state capture?
That is Holomisa personal view. There is an inquiry which has been already announced. Why waste your time? The opposition can go there and grandstand as well and ask questions, but I don't take that committee resolution seriously. I'm looking forward to the real stuff, where a person will be taking an oath.
Okay, General, thanks again for your time. General Bantu Olomisa, UDM leader on the phone line. Masiritziane, we'll come to you in a bit. Mr. Matole, good evening, and thanks for joining us. In your view, again, the questions were largely around the Gupta family and his proximity to them. Do you think he was able to give the necessary responses, or do you think, as Minister Lynn Brown once called it, a witch hunt process anyway, so it doesn't matter what he had to say?
Good evening, Cindy, and good evening to our viewers at home. We live in very interesting times, such that every minister who travels to Dubai is automatically linked to the Gupta family. So there is nothing wrong with traveling to Europe or traveling to Washington as a minister in the ANC government. If you happen to travel to Dubai, then you are linked with the Gupta family. You are guilty by association. So we live in very interesting times, Cindy, and it's very unfortunate that we have former radical soldiers of the people, like General Bantu Holomisa, turning on their own black people. So it's black on black violence now. Those who have been co-opted by white monopoly capital are being used as tools to oppress and vilify ministers in the ANC government that have some sort of association with the Gupta
One could say
family.
that is just a rhetoric in response of, or rather in protection of those who are implicated in state capture, that it is not, there's no real evidence that there is that inducement of people to, in your view, to tarnish the reputation of black ministers because the money is coming from the capitalists or white monopoly capital.
Exactly, Cindy. Minister Gigaba is being punished, is being penalized for his association with the Gupta family. But how many ministers prior to Malusi Gigaba were serving in the same department? There are so many ministers. We never heard of any minister being dragged before a parliamentary committee or an inquiry. This is just recent. The Guptas have been in this country for a long time. Prior to Mandela taking over, they were already here and they were already successful in business. 1993, they were already making profits in their enterprises. Remember that Peter Mayberg wrote in his book that in 1993, the Guptas would go on to make 1.7 million rands. From 1993 to 1999, the Guptas would report a profit of 98 million rands. And this is before, well before the Zuma administration. So this is just playing politics with the lives of our people. They want to deflect us from the issues that are the bread and butter issues of our people in this country. So they want to deflect us from the policies that have already been passed by the 54th Conference of the ANC. This is politics. So the more they drag ministers before parliamentary committees, the more people get deflected away from focusing on the real issues that we should mobilize and focus on.
Yeah, all right. I beg your pardon. Masiri Ziane, South African Liberty Foundation chairperson. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Do you think this is a form of intimidation or victimization, as Mr. Mitole seems to suggest, that ministers are being unfairly treated or targeted because of allegations and not substantive proof?
One cannot ignore that reality, which seems to suggest that if you visit Dubai, suddenly there's something wrong with you. If you're a minister, it's even worse. You are associated with the Guptas. It's a fact that we live in. Thus, I would reiterate that it's indeed an interesting time. But there are quite a number of things that we ourselves have been indicating. That indeed the inquiry in Parliament seems to be a kangaroo court, directed only at a specific, ignoring also other factors that seems to be erupting in there. You've had in a number of occasions that you had Brian Molefe, for argument's sake, bringing evidence that says, listen, the Tagata issue is a minor issue, is a drop in an ocean. You've got bigger problems. You've got people who've been targeting ESCOM, or rather been doing business with ESCOM at a larger scale. Why those are not being entertained? Your interest in this instance is only in relation to the Guptas, and I would for a minute just agree with the general when he says that perhaps this is just nothing else but a kangaroo court, and that the real state capture investigation should be done there, and it should not on the life of
of criminality, on the life of corruption, be limited only specific to one particular family. It should be broadened at all instances. So in this instance, the questions that are there with people with no legal experience, who only have got political experience, will only be digging to a specific ground. They'll be only looking at making sure that you indemnify, you make sure that you deal with the reputation of the minister. That's all you can do now. Now, if the minister doesn't answer certain questions because at that particular moment there is not even evidence that that question comes from, who is there to support? But what we were going to do is that we will look at the limelight. Who is at the limelight? How did the minister respond? Now, it is a court that is being given. It's a Hollywood court that we're having. Nothing else but sensationalization of issues. Real issues are not tested. No evidence is put before. No facts are put before. Like that, you've got nothing. But make sure that you can tarnish images of people. That's all that you can do. And one other thing that I totally disagree with the minister, who says that a minister that recommends individuals must take responsibilities of them. It means the whole of South Africa, we must take responsibilities of people that we voted in parliament, including General Holomisa and his utterances. If anybody says anything else, all of us, because we voted for them, therefore we must take responsibility for that. It doesn't work like that. People that are recommended and they do what they have to do, that is what they are going to take their accountability in line of what they are doing in their job. Another fact also that we should take.
Sorry, Maseri. Just maybe if we made a comparison in the appointment of a Chapter 9 institution, that being of the public protector, and how different the reception has been from the erstwhile public protector and the current one, albeit they went through the same public scrutiny and they were recommended by political parties and then appointed. Why do you think, or do you think that there is a hypocrisy and contradiction in how we deal with appointments at state-owned entities, depending on how, of course, they perform?
Not only that, can we rely also on the public protector, but also on the judges that are there, including the Constitutional Court. All of them are appointed by the president and so forth. For as long as you can do something that the public is made to believe is wrong, not that is wrong, but made to believe that is wrong. Therefore, that kind of innuendo comes into being, that people are convinced and say that these recommendations are all wrong, so therefore the minister must take a blame for it. If a judge or a magistrate make a wrong decision, must then somebody else up there who has appointed them take that accountability for them? It cannot be. I don't know, where do we take this thinking which is so wrong, and I hope it's going to be corrected before it goes further than this, because it's going to put South Africa in trouble. We need to come back to our senses, and people have to take accountability where indeed they are responsible for their activities. Another thing is this issue of why the minister should be responsible for accounting officers. There's no such thing in law. Accounting officers' rules are there. What they need to do, they are the political head. This of saying that the ANC has appointed ministers who must take accountability, and more than ever before, the accounting officers are the politician responsible for the action of the accounting officer. Where in law do you find that? The duties and the responsibility of an accounting officer are there. The duties and responsibilities of the minister are there. How do you come around and change things because you want it to benefit your narrative? Suddenly you say that the politician is the one who's supposed to be taking responsibility. The politician is protected by law. The accounting officers must take the blame where it deserves. We shouldn't just turn around and politicize each and every...
Mr. Matole seems to have a different view, Masiri. Just stay on the line, please. Your response, Edward?
Not necessarily a different view. I feel very flustered because I don't think in 2018 the South African public should be subjected to this kind of narrative. It's psychological torture. It's a Holocaust on our people. Everywhere you go, in buses, in minibuses, in flights, everyone is talking about Gupta, is talking about Malusi Gigaba, as if they are the be-all and end-all of running state affairs in this country. It cannot be. It cannot be. Because, I mean, the state has been there since 1994. And it's only recently that we see this kind of media cacophony that seeks to divert all our attention to just one Indian family and Malusi Gigaba and all those ministers who were appointed by a black president, all the ministers which were appointed by big capital, ministers like Pravin Gordhan, ministers like Kebisi Jonas, they are never dragged before any parliamentary committee. So this is theater, this is drama. They just want to keep us occupied with peripheral issues and not focus on the real issues that matter to our people. So Parliament will pay heavily for this. History will judge Parliament, the Parliament of South Africa, which has been captured to save the interests of the ruling class. Remember that the state exists as an executive committee in service of the ruling class. The state is not there to serve the interests of the people. That's why the ruling party should retrace its steps back to its founding principles. The ANC needs to go back to the ANC of Anthony Lembede and reclaim its glory. Because now, the more they keep us busy with this parliamentary drama, the people will get to know what the ANC is all about. We are moving into 2019. And if Parliament continues with these games, occupying the time that they are supposed to use to change the legislation of this country, to allow them to implement the policies that have been passed by the ANC, the more people will get to know the ANC for its real raison d'etre. Because, I mean, the ANC doesn't exist to serve the people of South Africa. We are being bombarded by propaganda after propaganda every day.
Motseri, your view, and especially the kind of questions and how they're formulated from the MPs around the nativity of where minister is born and when, how many times he's visited the Gupta family home and under which circumstances. What do you deduce out of the questions itself that it is intended to get what kind of response?
First is to really undermine a human being. It matters not where one is born, but, one could say that Oxalai is that you are a South African, and you must every time try to prove to people where you're born, your origins. If somebody hear me talk something else somewhere else differently, I'm going to be asked, where was I born? If we are all going to ask, particularly our white counterparts, where were they born? Majority of them, in fact, are not even born in South Africa. But what is the relevance of that? Where does it take us? And where would it help in ensuring that there is credibility and there is proper response? Anybody born out of South Africa will not be working in the interest of South Africa. A South African citizen, for that matter, who was sworn to protect South Africa as a minister, internal and external forces. Now you undermine that leader to that far. That shows the disrespect that portfolio could have on its own citizens. That is an utter disregard for a human being. How dare you ask such a question to another being? Where were you born? But whether you have visited this or have not visited it, how does it help the inquiry? Have you got the evidence to show the person that says that you on such a particular day you have visited X and the purpose of your visit was for X and Y? You were colluding, you were discussing corruption, that's why you visited them. That evidence is what is needed. Now, asking such a question just for the sake of Hollywood dramatic appearances, where will it take us?
Just stay with us, and I'm just going to get closing comments from you, starting with you, Mr. Matole. Going back again to the quality of or the content of the questions themselves. I know with MP Shivambu, we've even going to the point of allegations around Minister Malusi Gigaba's extramarital affairs and whether the money to pay the girlfriend came from the Guptas. What do you make of the quality just in how the whole process has been conducted?
What legacy is Floyd Shivambu leaving for the generations to come if he allows himself to be captured by such machinations in Parliament? Because, I mean, the quality of those questions and the line of questioning itself is very poor. the form and content of the questions is substandard. Those are not the questions you should be asking a minister before a parliamentary committee. Those are I can say kindergarten questions. How can you ask a minister how many times you have been to Dubai? I mean, Minister Gigaba has been a minister for a long time. I mean, he has been serving, even before becoming a minister, he's been serving the people of South Africa in various capacities, in various portfolios. I mean, how many times has he been to Dubai? Would he even remember how many times? Those are very kindergarten questions. I mean, they do not, what do people of South Africa benefit from knowing how many times Malusi Gigaba has been to Dubai? Of what benefit is that to the people of South Africa?
All right, Mr. Matoli, I'm afraid it's seriously out of time. And you at home, thank you so much for watching. Of course, taking reactions from the SOE inquiry in Parliament today with Minister of Home Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, giving his submissions. Thanks indeed for joining us. We take a quick break. That was Edward Mitole, political analyst, and we had General Bantu Lomisa, UDM leader, and Musiri Tsiane from the South African Liberty Foundation as their chairperson. We're back after this.